So you want to know the best VR sim racing titles for 2026? Well, you come to the right place because I spend way too much time sim racing in VR, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Sim racing in VR is not for everyone. You have to spend time adjusting your settings, being in the right headset, being in the right sim, but when it all comes together, it is a much better experience than sim racing in 2D. You get depth perception. You can perceive the apex is getting closer to you. You can use your peripheral vision to judge how much space to use on the exit, and you can do the most millimeter accurate overtakes or just get it all wrong. Now 2026 is a big year for VR because Valve is coming in with the Steam frame, and we have a lot of sims that launched in 2025 that are going to refine and reiterate their VR. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to start with iRacing. I feel like iRacing is a massively underrated sim in virtual reality. So you can run iRacing in OpenXR, you can run it in OpenVR. That just gives you more options, more chances it's going to work better with your hardware using those two different rendering options. And in my experience, it's one of the best performing titles in VR as well. There's not so much of a penalty in terms of FPS when you're in VR. Everything generally for me works smoothly, and it's pretty sharp as well. Something that's very important you're going to hear me talk about in this video is whether the VR experience is sharp or whether you have a lot of aliasing and it gets kind of muddy in the distance. In iRacing for me, it does not get muddy in the distance. Certainly with the headsets I'm using in this video, which are mainly Pimax headsets, I'll let you know about later on. So definitely worth checking out iRacing. The downsides are you need a subscription, and then you need to buy certain of the cars, but not all of them. I think the car I'm using right now, the FF1600, I think that might be free in iRacing, but this track is not. However, when you saw me at Laguna Seca, that was a free track. So it gets complicated with iRacing. You need to subscribe, you need to buy cars. But again, in VR, because you have such a close association with the car you're driving, to me, it makes more of a justification that you buy a car in iRacing and you really get to understand it and love it and drive it really hard. It's a different thing to being in other gaming titles where you're jumping from car to car to car. If you want to fully understand the car in iRacing in VR, it makes sense to buy one and use it for a couple of seasons. However, I want to make you aware of the monetization. Open wheel driving in iRacing is unreal as well. You're not going to get this in a few of the other sims I'm going to recommend in this video, but you can do open wheel racing and it's phenomenal. Okay, now moving on to the next sim racing title I'm going to recommend for 2026. And a lot of other people, by the way, would not recommend this title. However, it's going to be 2026, and given the hardware that a lot of people are going to be on, I feel like it brute forces some of the issues people had previously with this sim. This is Assetto Corsa Competizione, and I have incredible racing in VR in ACC. Like unbelievable racing. You can see here doing the Nürburgring 24-hour version in rain conditions with a load of GT3s. It's fantastic, and it doesn't feel claustrophobic in this GT3 as it can do sometimes if you have your field of view set up correctly. I can always glance to the mirrors, I can see what's going on, you can see the rain streaking up and down the windshield. It's a phenomenally immersive experience in ACC, and to be honest, when I just want to drive, put on a headset and feel really immersed in something, I'll often put it in ACC. I can get really high frame rates depending on the headset I'm using. If I'm using the Crystal Light, I can go up to 120 Hz. If I'm using the Crystal Super, I can go up to 90 Hz. But 120 Hz on the Crystal Super here is an extremely fluid experience, and again, very sharp for me actually. Quite a sharp experience, and lots of settings you can tweak in Assetto Corsa Competizione with the VR. So I'm a big fan of ACC in VR. I think this is a title worth picking up in 2026 for VR, given that it's often on sale for like, I don't know, $10 or $15 or something like that. So this is ACC, definitely worth knowing about. Right, now we're heading to one of the most modern sims on the list, and this is Le Mans Ultimate. And this is very particular because you can drive hypercars, you can drive LMP2s and LMP3s in Le Mans Ultimate. And if you've ever seen one of these cars up close, the cockpits are very weird places. Like, they're very, very tightly wrapped. They're unusual. They're a bit alien. And sometimes when you're driving on a 2D screen, it can feel very claustrophobic. And that's why in VR, suddenly it makes sense. You can see around the cockpit. You can see what the driver would be experiencing. And for me, VR is actually the best way to drive these cars. I feel more connected driving these cars in VR, especially because they're so nimble as well. They rotate so nicely. You can really feel that pivoting. So there are some things to bear in mind with Le Mans Ultimate. It is not the best performing VR game for me. So I have to run some modifications to get an acceptable experience. And I don't like that. I don't like having to run modifications because I feel like that should be done by the developers and they should give me the tools to kind of, adjust the settings in the game to make it more performant on my headsets. But essentially what I do with Le Mans Ultimate is I vertically crop it. So I lose some of the top and some of the bottom that you don't really notice. It's more about that side-to-side peripheral vision you want to keep, which I maintain. And that means that my PC is having to render less pixels. But running something like this on a Pimax Crystal Super is extremely intensive. Do not buy this for a Pimax Crystal Super unless you have at least a 4090 or you have a 5090. Like, it's a very intensive game. However, fully licensed. You're racing against the actual WEC cars and drivers with their liveries. It's fantastic. A load of tracks. Again, there's monetization. A lot of the tracks are hidden behind DLCs and subscriptions and whatnot. But once you're in there, it feels fantastic. You can do accelerated night-day races. It sounds amazing. The HUD is really, really, really good. Like, you have a lot of visibility around the HUD. You can keep the radar on if you want, which is helpful, or you can take it off if you want full immersion. But Le Mans Ultimate in VR, they partnered with Pimax, or at least I think Pimax invested $2 million in Le Mans Ultimate when Le Mans Ultimate was going through financial difficulties. So they do care about VR. There's a bit of a angle here where they want to push VR. So definitely worth considering Le Mans Ultimate in virtual reality for 2026. Now we're going to switch gears and go to a sim racing title that I've played in VR, but I can't recommend for 2026 because I don't think it's working in 2026. And this is Rennsport. You can see here, I've driven Rennsport in virtual reality, and I'll let you know how it was, but as I understand it, this is not part of the game at the moment. I believe they've taken it out and they're going to add it back in. That's my understanding. But when I was driving Rennsport anyway in VR, it was not the clearest experience. Have a look at the fences on the right hand side at Monza, and you can see a lot of shimmering. This is what I'm talking about with aliasing and blurriness. And I don't like that. I like it to be kind of pin sharp. I like to be able to see through fences. I like to be able to see braking markers in the distance. So I just wanted to flag to you that I would not recommend Rennsport right now for VR in 2026. I don't even think it's available. Right, next we're going to go on to an absolute OG of VR sim racing, and some would say it's just the best sim racing VR title you can get. Before that, I want to give a quick shout out to the Pimax headsets I'm using. This video is sponsored by Pimax, so big thanks to Pimax for sponsoring this video. And you can see I'm using the Pimax Crystal, the OG Crystal, the Crystal Lite and the Crystal Super. Do not rush into buying these headsets unless you've done your research on what's required to power them. If you go out and buy a Pimax Crystal Super and you don't have that BC graphics card, you're not going to have a good experience because your PC is not going to be able to run it. So if you have a mid-range PC, I'd recommend getting the Pimax Crystal Lite. I've done videos on this channel using a 4060 Ti kind of entry-level graphics card and running it on the Pimax Crystal Lite in iRacing and other sims. If you got the BC graphics card, if you got a 5090, you almost should be trying out something like a Pimax Crystal Super because you can actually run it and have an experience that's at the forefront of sim racing today. So Pimax often run discounts, and I'll have discount codes in the description. So check the description if you're interested and use my affiliate link if you're thinking about picking up a Pimax Crystal headset. But remember to do your research, and the best place to start is watching the guides on my channel. Now back to the sim I'm going to recommend here. It's ancient, yes, but some would say it's the granddaddy. It's Assetto Corsa, the original Assetto Corsa in VR. It runs really smoothly generally. There's a load of modding available, and when I go to expos and I'm testing headsets and equipment and want to show off VR, it tends to be Assetto Corsa they're running. And remember, when a company goes to an expo, they don't want to have any downtime, they don't want to have any issues with the sim, they're just going to lose the ability to show off their equipment. So it kind of is a vouch of confidence in Assetto Corsa. It is dirt cheap as well. Like, it is the cheapest sim racing game in this list that I'm doing in this video. So definitely worth considering the original Assetto Corsa. Again, remember, there's always a trade-off with VR. the better the graphics are in a VR title, probably the lower frame rates you're going to have. So because Assetto Corsa is such an old game, it's 10 years old now, it's one of the most performant games in VR. Some people actually prefer it to Assetto Corsa Competizione, which is running on Unreal Engine. Some people like that original Assetto Corsa. But what if you want to try the sequel to Assetto Corsa? Well, that is this Assetto Corsa EVO. I'm showing you on the screen right now. This game does not run as smoothly as the original Assetto Corsa. However, there are kind of new features. When you go into the VR space, the differences between the original Assetto Corsa and Assetto Corsa EVO become very small in my opinion, because it's debated even in the 2D version, but when you go into VR, it just doesn't perform as well. However, I personally really like the handling model in Assetto Corsa EVO. It feels like a proper track day simulator to me. I feel like it really shines in the road cars, and when you're in virtual reality, you can immerse yourself in that environment. So you can really feel the weight transfer in Assetto Corsa EVO. You saw a little stutter there. That wasn't in the recording of this video. That's an actual stutter that I had in the game. There seems to be some issue with loading or streaming assets. Hopefully the performance will increase, but for 2026, I would not buy Assetto Corsa EVO for the VR specifically. However, if you already have Assetto Corsa EVO, worth trying out in VR. Now, here's something you really need to bear in mind that for some reason they will not fix. I don't understand why. If you play Assetto Corsa EVO in 2D on settings that are good for your PC, and then you try and load in VR, it will just hang and crash your PC, which I don't like. You basically need to go in 2D, lower all the settings to minimum, then close the game, and then launch it in VR with the settings at minimum, so your game can actually run it, and then experiment bit by bit with increasing those settings. But yeah, it's rough at the moment in VR. I would not recommend Assetto Corsa EVO in 2026 for the VR alone. Right, another game that I would not recommend in 2026 is F1 25. Like, I just have never found the F1 games good in VR. I don't know why people don't speak about this, maybe because they're all sponsored by EA and they're not allowed to say it in the contract or something, but to me it's a joke how bad this game is in VR. It's very difficult to optimize, very difficult to run effectively. It's just not a nice place to be in VR. They don't do a lot of quality of life features, and it's such a shame because it would be really, really, really fun in VR. So from my opinion, do not buy F1 25 for the VR in 2026. Remember, there's not going to be an EA F1 game in 2026. Are they even going to keep hold of the license? And part of the reason I say that is actually Assetto Corsa EVO now has Formula 1 cars in it. It has the original, not the original, it has the 2005 Ferrari F1 car from Michael Schumacher, but it also has the 2025 Ferrari F1 car as well. So the best place to drive an F1 car in VR right now is not in the F1 game, but it's in Assetto Corsa EVO. So just a caveat, going back to Assetto Corsa EVO for a second, if you want to drive F1 cars, actually it may be worth picking up Assetto Corsa EVO. Now, by the way, all the videos you're seeing on screen here, these are all, I've done separate videos on all these races. So let me know anything interesting that you want to see in the comments, and make sure to subscribe as well. It lets me know that people like the VR videos and I can make more of them. And you thought I'd forgotten, right? But I haven't. It's Gran Turismo 7 on the PSVR 2, on PS5. One of the best sim racing VR experiences you can have because it is just so plug and play. So if you do not have a beastly PC, but you have a PS5, definitely worth considering picking up PSVR 2 for Gran Turismo 7. Basically, the entire game you can play in VR. There are some quality of life features they need to add that they just refuse to add, and I keep telling them to add it. Stuff like removing the HUD with one button, also showing more detailed information where other drivers are on pit stops, etc. But leaving that aside, you can go into the cars in a VR showroom. I have my car in real life that I drive, my Peugeot sports car, is in the game, and I can tell you it's very, very, very accurate. You can trust me on that. And so you can sit in a Ferrari, you can sit in a Lamborghini, you can sit in a classic car, you can sit in an old Formula 1 car. Like, it's unbelievable. So yeah, Gran Turismo 7 on PSVR 2, definitely in this list. And there we go. Let me know what you thought of the list. These are the best sim racing VR titles of 2026. Any more you know of, let me know in the comments. Obviously, we didn't put AMS 2 in. We didn't put Project Cars 2 in. We didn't include everything. So anything else you want to put in, put them in the comments. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.